I'm Alex, 34, an architect who's always prided herself on building solid foundations, not just in structures, but in life. My personal mantra revolved around meticulous planning, diligent saving, and strategic investment, driven by a deep-seated belief that true freedom came from self-reliance. This philosophy, forged through years of disciplined effort, stood in stark contrast to that of my younger sister, Chloe, 30. An artist whose free spirit often translated into a truly free spending habit, Chloe existed in a world where financial realities seemed to bend to her creative will. For as long as I could remember, I was her unofficial benefactor, her silent financial safety net. When she dropped out of art school in her second year, abandoning her tuition loan, I quietly covered her remaining fees, a sum I'd earmarked for a down payment on my first solo architectural project. When rent was due, or her experimental art studio fees piled up, I'd quietly transfer funds, always telling myself she just needed a little push, a little more space, to find her footing, to unleash her genius. My parents, Eleanor and George, would often praise my pragmatic generosity to Chloe, while simultaneously indulging Chloe's every artistic whim. "Chloe just sees the world differently, Alex," my mother would say with a knowing smile, as if this explained every financial misstep. "And you're so good with money, dear. Family helps family." It was a phrase that began as comfort and ended as a subtle form of coercion. The most significant drain on my meticulously built financial reserves, however, came just 6 months ago. The phone call from Chloe was breathless, almost manic with excitement. She'd been offered a spot, she claimed, in an exclusive, high-profile exhibition at a prestigious gallery in Milan, a career-making opportunity, a golden ticket to the global art scene. She painted a vivid picture renowned critics, international collectors, the kind of exposure that would finally launch her into self-sufficiency. The gallery fees, the specialized travel for her delicate installations, the unique material costs for her masterpieces, it all totaled a staggering $15,000. It was a massive sum, a significant chunk of my carefully guarded emergency fund. But the way she framed it, this was it. This was the final push, the last investment. She promised swift repayment once her work sold, once the commissions rolled in. I agonized over the decision for days, poring over my spreadsheets, weighing the tangible loss against the intangible hope. I recalled every promise, every "this time it's different," every moment I'd seen a flicker of genuine ambition in her. I finally transferred the money, a large chunk of my financial security, holding on to a fragile hope that this once, just this once, her ambition would finally outweigh her indulgence. I even drafted a simple repayment agreement, a basic one-page document, but Chloe laughed it off. "Alex, please, it's family. You don't need a contract." And I foolishly let it go. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. I heard nothing about the Milan exhibition, no frantic phone calls about customs, no excited messages about the gallery opening, no photos of her art proudly displayed, just vague mentions of her being immersed in creation, finding her flow, and needing to disconnect from distractions. My unease grew with each passing day. I'd send polite texts asking for updates, receiving only emoji-laden replies or brief, non-committal voice notes. The anxiety gnawed at me. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, a casual scroll through Instagram changed everything. Chloe had posted a series of dazzling photos, not of a bustling, minimalist gallery space, but of a sun-drenched yacht slicing through impossibly blue waters in the Caribbean. Crystal-clear waters, gourmet meals, vibrant cocktails, and herself, radiating leisure, draped in expensive swimwear, surrounded by other equally relaxed creatives on what she tagged as a deep-dive artistic enlightenment retreat. There were captions like "Finding my muse on the high seas, nourishing the soul with inspiration and recharging my creative spirit in paradise." My blood ran cold, then simmered with a chilling realization. The $15,000 for her career-making exhibition had bankrolled a luxury vacation. My kindness, I realized with a sickening lurch that settled deep in my gut, had been mistaken for weakness. My trust had been exploited. My generosity had become their entitlement. My first call, through trembling fingers, was to my mother. "Mom," I began, my voice a thin, unsteady wire. "Did you know Chloe used the Milan exhibition money for a Caribbean trip?" There was a pause, a familiar sigh on the other end of the line, a sound that always signaled dismissal. "Oh, that. Well, darling, she just needed a break, honey. Artists need inspiration. You're so rigid with your finances. It's not a big deal." The casualness of her words, the immediate defense of Chloe's deceit, sent a shockwave through me. "Not a big deal?" I retorted, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. "She took $15,000 under false pretenses. That was my emergency fund. That was supposed to be a career investment." My mother's tone shifted, becoming sharp, defensive, almost accusatory. "She said you were fine with it. She said you understood. You have so much, Alex. And frankly, you're so focused on your career, so driven. We thought this might be a wake-up call for you to relax a bit, to enjoy life more. It's for your own good, really." Her suggestion that my heartbreak and financial loss were merely a lesson from my own rigidity, that my well-being was secondary to Chloe's inspiration, left me absolutely speechless. The line went dead before I could articulate the depth of the betrayal. Next, I confronted Chloe directly. My text was blunt, stripped of any emotion. "We need to talk about the $15,000 for Milan. I saw your retreat photos." Her reply came swiftly, dripping with indignation, not a hint of remorse. "Seriously, Alex? You're making a fuss now? You don't understand artistic struggle. I needed this for my mental health, for my art. You're just jealous because I'm living my passion while you're stuck in your boring office, crunching numbers and living a life I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole." She then launched into a tirade, threatening to cut me off, to never speak to me again, accusing me of poisoning her creative well with my negativity and bourgeois concerns. The sheer audacity to imply my objection to being defrauded was rooted in jealousy of her lavish deceit. To twist her blatant lie into a moral failing on my part was truly staggering. It felt like a punch to the gut, leaving me gasping for air. The day only worsened. Later that afternoon, a family friend, someone I barely knew, tagged me in one of Chloe's public posts, a panoramic shot of her meditating serenely on a pristine beach, the sun glinting off the water. The caption read, "Sometimes the biggest act of love is letting go of toxic expectations and financial burdens you never asked for. Feeling so free." Her closest artistic friends commented with fire emojis and tell him, "Girl, yes, live your best life. Shed that negativity." The veiled public humiliation, broadcast to our mutual circle and beyond, was the final agonizing straw. They had stolen from me, lied to me, and now were publicly mocking my generosity, twisting my kindness into a toxic expectation. That night, alone in my meticulously organized apartment, the full, crushing weight of the betrayal hit me. It wasn't just the money, though that was a significant loss. It was the years of being taken for granted, of being manipulated, of watching my parents enable a dynamic that systematically diminished my contributions and celebrated Chloe's extravagance. Was I nothing more than a bank to them, a human ATM to be drained at will? The tears came, hot and furious, a torrent of suppressed hurt and resentment pouring out, years of quiet frustrations, of being the responsible one while Chloe reaped endless indulgence, boiled to the surface. My phone buzzed relentlessly with calls from confused relatives who had seen Chloe's passive-aggressive posts and sensed the underlying tension. I couldn't answer. I called my best friend Maya instead, choking back sobs as I recounted the tale. "Maya, they did what? Alex, that's not just inconsiderate, that's literally fraud. They exploited your kindness and they weaponized it against you. This isn't generosity, it's abuse." Her clear-eyed validation, her unwavering support, was a life raft in a churning sea of self-doubt. The next day, still reeling, a colleague from the firm, Ben, noticed my distraction and the unusual dark circles under my eyes. When I cautiously explained my family financial issues, his response surprised me with its directness. Family financial abuse? Sounds like what I went through with my brother. He shared his own history with a demanding sibling, describing the insidious guilt trips, the relentless manipulation tactics, the emotional and financial drain. He didn't offer platitudes. He offered solutions. He recommended a therapist, Dr. Evelyn Park, who specialized specifically in family financial dynamics and boundary setting, and an anonymous online support group. Reading through countless stories on the forum titled, "When Family Sees You as a Bank, Not a Person," I found painful yet profound solace. Others described feeling like human ATMs rather than loved ones, their generosity endlessly exploited. They wanted to show they could take without giving anything in return. One post resonated deeply, not even basic respect. It was a painful mirror, but one that finally showed me the distorted reality of my family dynamic. I realized with a new, steel-like resolve that setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was a fundamental necessity for my emotional, mental, and financial well-being. My kindness had been used as a weapon, and it was time to disarm them. With this newfound resolve, I immediately froze all accounts linked to Chloe and drafted a formal demand letter with the assistance of a legal counsel specializing in financial recovery. The letter detailed the unauthorized use of funds, the fraudulent pretenses under which the money was taken, and demanded full repayment of the $15,000 within 30 days. Be prepared for significant family backlash, my attorney, Miss Davies, warned, her expression grim. They're likely to escalate dramatically before even considering compliance. This is about power and control for them, not just money. Her prediction was chillingly accurate. Within hours of the letter being delivered, my phone exploded with tearful voicemails from my mother, thick with accusations of tearing the family apart over money, of being cold and unfeeling. My father sent lengthy, rambling texts about his profound disappointment in my extreme, unfamily-like measures that would ruin Chloe's life. Chloe herself posted a flurry of vague but undeniably pointed social media updates about toxic family members revealing their true colors, shedding negativity, and the burden of unasked-for expectations. I had anticipated this escalation. Following my therapist's advice, I blocked them on social media, filtered their emails into a separate folder, and saved all voicemails as potential evidence. These boundaries were not merely legal tactics. They were essential for my emotional health, a protective shield against the relentless onslaught of manipulation. The family smear campaign intensified in the following days. My mother, Eleanor, resorted to mass texting extended relatives, painting me as an unreasonable, bitter person who was ruining Chloe's burgeoning artistic career out of pure jealousy. My phone filled with messages from well-meaning but misguided aunts and uncles telling me family is everything, blood is thicker than water, and that I should just forgive and forget, dear. My cousin Michael, however, a quiet software engineer known for his logical mind, called me directly. Aunt Eleanor's version of events just didn't add up. I know you, Alex. You wouldn't do something like this without serious cause. What actually happened? When I calmly and factually explained everything, sharing dates, amounts, and Chloe's own social media posts, he was appalled. They threw a luxury trip on your dime and are playing the victims? That's gaslighting on an Olympic level, Alex. Unbelievable. His immediate, unconditional support was a vital anchor. My Aunt Patricia, a matriarch known for her unwavering fairness and sharp wit, also reached out. Aunt Patricia, your mother called me crying hysterically, but I've watched how they've treated you for years, Alex. Always taking, rarely giving back anything beyond empty promises. Her support was more than just comforting. It was a powerful validation of my long-held but unarticulated experiences, and she wasn't afraid to share her perspective with other family members, subtly undermining Eleanor's narrative. As the social media drama unfolded, reaching a fever pitch with screenshots of Chloe's posts and my mother's texts circulating, I maintained my public silence. My therapist, Dr. Park, advised strongly against engaging in a public fight where emotions were high and facts were easily distorted. Instead, I responded privately only to those who reached out directly, sharing my side calmly, factually, and often with documentation. This quiet, strategic approach was remarkably effective. The truth, unburdened by emotional outbursts, spread through private conversations, reaching receptive ears. James, an old family friend who had witnessed years of the dynamic, sent a particularly touching message. "I've watched you support Chloe through countless fresh starts over the years, Alex. Your generosity has been consistent while her appreciation has been notably absent. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's long overdue. It's about self-respect, and it's something I admire." The calls from Chloe began, her initial tearful pleas quickly turning to furious rage. "You've ruined everything. The trip organizer is threatening to send us to collections. This will destroy my creative reputation before it even starts." "I'm sorry you're in this position, Chloe," I replied calmly, my voice steady, no longer trembling. "But I didn't authorize those expenses. You did. You took my money under false pretenses. But you're supposed to help family. Family doesn't steal from family, Chloe, and family doesn't lie about their intentions." Later that week, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced, her face blotchy, sobbing about how I was destroying Chloe's future and breaking our family apart. "Mom, I didn't create this situation. You all did when you chose to abuse my trust and enable Chloe's irresponsible behavior. My financial stability comes from careful planning and boundaries, not an endless supply of cash for others' luxuries." As she left, still crying, the familiar, suffocating weight of guilt tried to settle on my shoulders, but underneath it, a new, exhilarating sense of righteous anger and burgeoning self-respect gave me strength. At Dr. Park's suggestion, and against my family's initial protests, I arranged a family meeting with a professional mediator, Miss Sarah Jenkins. I made it unequivocally clear this was the only context in which I would discuss the situation or any future family interactions. Surprisingly, perhaps due to the increasing public scrutiny and David's dramatic exit, they agreed. Miss Jenkins, a calm yet authoritative presence, established clear ground rules: respectful language, no interruptions, focus on solutions. I spoke first, presenting a clear, factual account of what had happened, supported by transaction records and Chloe's own social media posts. More importantly, I articulated how the betrayal had affected me emotionally and financially, the years of feeling used, the erosion of trust. "I've spent years helping all of you. I've never begrudged legitimate help for genuine need, but taking my money under false pretenses, using it for luxury expenses, and then publicly mocking me crossed every reasonable boundary of respect and decency. I cannot and will not continue a relationship where I'm valued only for what I can provide financially, or where my generosity is seen as weakness." My parents, their usual bluster muted by the mediator's presence, reluctantly agreed to my terms: full repayment of the $15,000, a written acknowledgement of wrongdoing from Chloe, and clear, documented boundaries for all future financial interactions. No more assumptions of my support, no loans without formal, signed documentation, and a clear repayment schedule. Chloe balked furiously at the repayment plan, claiming it was unjust and artistically stifling, but eventually agreed when the mediator patiently highlighted the unavoidable legal alternatives and the potential impact on her reputation. These terms are not punitive, they're the minimum requirements for rebuilding trust. Without trust, we have no foundation for a healthy relationship, financial or otherwise. The 6 months that followed were challenging but profoundly clarifying. My parents surprisingly adhered to the payment schedule for the first few months, a grudging acknowledgement of the new reality. Communication was minimal but civil, focused on superficial updates rather than the deep-seated issues. Chloe made her first 2 payments, always late, always with a resentful text. But when the 3rd payment was due, the excuses began. "My art supplies are expensive. I had an unexpected opportunity." I held firm, reminding her of the agreed-upon dates and the structured payments I had designed to be manageable. She eventually paid, but her resentment was a palpable, simmering presence that colored every interaction. Our family dynamic transformed into something I would describe as limited but functional, like a carefully managed business relationship rather than a warm familial one. My parents and I spoke weekly, with conversations strictly focused on general life updates, avoiding any financial matters or anything remotely related to Chloe. They had, to my surprise, begun working with a legitimate financial advisor I'd recommended, something I hadn't dared suggest before, and were making tangible progress toward greater financial independence. Chloe, after completing the repayment plan, chose to maintain minimal contact, telling others, as I heard through the grapevine, that I was too rigid and too focused on money to be part of her free-spirited creative journey. Rather than fight this tired, self-serving narrative, I chose to focus on my own well-being and growth. My career flourished as I channeled the energy I once spent managing their expectations into professional development, earning a significant promotion to senior architect. I purchased my dream home, a modern loft with sweeping city views, not sharing this profound personal achievement with my immediate family, having learned that financial milestones often triggered demands and requests rather than genuine congratulations. Perhaps most meaningfully, and as a quiet act of defiance against the self-serving artistic inspiration Chloe had used as an excuse, I anonymously established a scholarship fund for aspiring young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, arranged through a charitable trust. While Chloe had squandered my generosity on a luxury retreat, I still wanted to support genuine artistic endeavor, but this time without the burden of expectation or the possibility of exploitation. It was a way to reclaim the spirit of generosity on my own terms. 1 year after the retreat incident, I met my mother for coffee in a neutral downtown cafe. Our relationship had stabilized into something more adult and balanced, if still somewhat cautious. "I want you to know, Alex," she said hesitantly, stirring her latte, her eyes meeting mine, "that I understand better now why what we did was wrong. It wasn't just about the money, Chloe's spending. It was about respect. Our respect for you. A small, genuine admission that felt like a quiet victory." She nodded slowly, a deep sigh escaping her. "I do. And I'm truly sorry it took something this extreme, this public, for me to see it." Her apology, belated and perhaps imperfect, was a tangible acknowledgement of a long unseen invoice, finally paid. The journey from being a financial doormat, perpetually drained and undervalued, to a person with unwavering self-respect and clear boundaries had been long, arduous, and often excruciatingly painful, but fundamentally, undeniably necessary. I had learned critical, life-altering lessons about the crucial difference between genuine generosity and insidious exploitation, about the absolute necessity of setting unyielding boundaries with those who claim the right to cross them, and most importantly, about my own inherent worth beyond what I could provide to others. Family relationships aren't unconditional, despite what conventional wisdom so often suggests. They require mutual respect, consistent consideration, and genuine care to truly thrive. When these fundamental elements are consistently absent, when you are repeatedly taken for granted, it's not selfish to protect yourself. It's an act of profound self-preservation, essential for your very soul. I didn't get the fairy tale family reconciliation I once desperately hoped for, but I left with something far more valuable than their approval, their misplaced affection, or their endless demands. I left with my head held high, my spirit unburdened, and the quiet, unshakable certainty that I no longer needed to explain my choices or justify my worth to anyone. That, I realized, was the ending no one expected, and the one I finally, truly deserved. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe so we can grow.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are really diving deep into a listener's source. It's a truly raw, first-person account of navigating some intensely difficult family dynamics.
Yeah, we're talking financial exploitation, manipulation, and that really hard road, the journey of setting boundaries.
Absolutely. The source is a narrative shared by someone we're calling Alex. It details her experiences mainly with her sister Chloe, but also very much involves their parents.
It's a story that definitely gets uncomfortable. I mean, it's quite confronting in places, but it's just packed with these incredibly sharp insights, I think.
Totally agree. And our mission, really, with this deep dive is to unpack Alex's story. We want to pull out those key moments, understand the subtle and maybe not so subtle ways these dynamics played out.
And look at what it tells us, about recognizing enabling behavior, maybe understanding financial abuse within families.
And ultimately what it took for Alex to find that strength, protect her own well-being and sort of redraw those lines.
Right. And to really grasp the core of this conflict, you kind of have to go back. You need to understand the foundation, the family history, and the setup described in the source that really paved the way for everything that happened later.
Okay, let's get into that. Alex describes herself as an architect. She builds things, right? Stable things, both in her job and, it seems, in how she approaches life generally.
Yeah, a planner, a saver, someone who really values self-reliance, it sounds like.
But then there's her younger sister, Chloe, depicted as this free-spirited artist.
And in Alex's telling, that free spirit often came with a very free spending habit.
Right. And the source makes it clear this wasn't like a new thing. This dynamic had been going on for years.
Alex had essentially been Chloe's unofficial financial safety net.
Yeah, there are examples like quietly covering Chloe's
Yeah.
abandoned art school loan fees, helping out with rent, paying for studio costs, stuff like that.
And Alex is thinking her internal narrative was always sort of, oh, Chloe just needs a little help, a little space to find her way.
And the parents, Eleanor and George, they played a huge role in kind of cementing this pattern, didn't they?
Oh, definitely. The source describes them praising Alex's pragmatic generosity, like it was her job almost.
Her expected role, yeah. Like she was supposed to be the steady one providing.
While at the same time indulging Chloe's, artistic whims as they saw them.
And there's this phrase mentioned quite powerfully, family helps family.
Which sounds lovely on the surface.
Yeah.
Comforting even.
But for Alex, it became this subtle, almost coercive pressure. Keep giving, keep helping because, well, that's what family does.
It absolutely set up this dynamic where one sibling's responsibility, her willingness to help, was basically leveraged.
Often with the parents encouraging it.
Right. To enable the other sibling's irresponsibility. It's a classic enabling structure right there at the foundation.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting and frankly pretty devastating. The narrative really pivots around this major turning point. Happened about 6 months before Alex wrote this account.
Chloe calls her, sounds incredibly excited, apparently.
Yeah, claiming she'd been offered this spot in a prestigious exhibition in Milan. A huge deal.
A career-making opportunity was the phrase used.
Exactly. And the details Chloe gave, they seemed legitimate, right? Gallery fees, specialized travel needed because her art was delicate.
Specific material costs, it all added up.
To a very significant sum. $15,000.
Wow.
$15,000.
Alex says it was a massive chunk of her emergency fund. A huge hit.
But Chloe promised, right, this was the last push she'd need, a final investment.
Assurances of quick repayment, too, once her work sold in Milan.
And Alex describes agonizing over it. You can feel the struggle, weighing that substantial loss against this, like, persistent hope she still held out for Chloe.
Remembering all the past promises that hadn't quite panned out.
But despite that internal conflict, the source says she did it. She transferred the money.
Clinging to that fragile hope, maybe.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
And there's this really key detail here. Alex, being the planner she is.
Right, the architect.
She actually drafted a simple repayment agreement. Just something basic. But Chloe just laughed it off. According to the source, she said something like, Alex, please, it's family. You don't need a contract.
Ooh, that dismissal.
Yeah. And Alex, against her better judgment, apparently, let it go.
And that dismissal, brushing off even a basic agreement in the name of family, that's such a red flag. It points right to those blurred, potentially exploitative boundaries we see developing.
So the money's transferred. And then the unease starts to build.
Weeks go by, then months.
And just vague updates from Chloe about Milan, right? Mentions of being immersed in creation or...
Finding her flow. Yeah, very nonspecific, no solid details.
The anxiety was just gnawing at Alex, the source says. And then the truth comes out.
Not through a conversation, though. Not a confession.
No, it came out. Well, she was just casually scrolling Instagram.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. Alex describes seeing these incredibly glamorous photos, not from a gallery in Milan, though.
Where from?
Chloe lounging on a yacht. In the Caribbean.
You're kidding. The
Yeah.
Caribbean.
The location tag. Something like a deep dive artistic enlightenment retreat.
A retreat, not an exhibition.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And the captions were things like, finding my muse on the high seas, nourishing the soul, recharging my creative spirit.
Wow. Wow.
And that's the moment the chilling realization hits her.
The $15,000 presented as essential funding for a career-making exhibition.
Had been used to bankroll a luxury vacation.
The source describes it as a sickening lurch. That stark moment where kindness was just utterly mistaken for weakness.
Trust blatantly exploited. Generosity twisted into entitlement.
It wasn't just a poor financial decision or, a simple miscommunication. This was clearly depicted as deceit.
Absolutely. Funds asked for under a specific false pretense.
And then used for something totally different, purely self-serving. It's textbook financial exploitation within a family context.
Definitely. And Alex's first call after seeing this, her fingers apparently trembling, was to her mother.
And the response she got?
Immediate dismissal. Almost casual. Oh, that. Well, darling, she just needed a break, honey.
Needed a break. With $15,000 of her sister's money.
Apparently so. Artists need inspiration, the mother said. You're so rigid with your finances, it's not a big deal.
That casualness.
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it? Minimizing Alex's very real financial loss. The emotional betrayal.
But then, the source says, her mother's tone shifted dramatically.
How so?
Became sharp, defensive, even accusatory. She claims Chloe told her Alex was fine with it.
What? After laughing off the contract?
Exactly, and then suggests this whole thing was actually a wake-up call for Alex.
Yep.
Framed as being for your own good, to relax more.
Wow. That shift. That's straight out of the manipulation playbook, isn't it?
Feels like it.
First, minimize the harm. It's not a big deal. Then blame the victim. You're so rigid.
And finally, try to reframe the exploitation as somehow beneficial for the person who was harmed. A wake-up call for your own good.
It's a form of gaslighting, absolutely. Making Alex question her own very valid reaction to being defrauded.
So Alex then confronts Chloe directly, via text. Strips out the emotion, just states the facts, the $15 K, the retreat photos.
And Chloe's reply? Equally revealing, I imagine.
Oh yeah, indignant, defensive, completely remorseless, according to Alex.
No apology then.
Not even close. She dismisses Alex's concerns as making a fuss. Says Alex doesn't understand artistic struggle.
Ah, the artistic struggle defense.
Right. Insists the trip was necessary for her mental health and her art.
Unnecessary. With her sister's emergency fund.
And then she escalates, accuses Alex of being just jealous.
Jealous of being lied to and having money taken.
Apparently. And even threatens to cut Alex off. Claims Alex was poisoning her creative well.
The sheer audacity. I mean, really, to take being defrauded and twisted into Alex's moral failing.
Implying her objection is just jealousy. It's staggering.
These initial confrontations, they just show how quickly that family system, enabled by the parents, snaps into place.
Protects the person whose behavior is harmful, Chloe.
And further gaslights the person who has harmed Alex.
Yeah. The financial exploitation here, it's clearly depicted as just a symptom, isn't it?
Absolutely. A symptom of something much deeper, longer standing. Disrespect, a fundamentally distorted family dynamic.
Where one member's needs and whims were just perpetually prioritized and enabled over the other's well-being and resources.
But the final straw, the source says there was one more thing. The moment that felt like a public blow.
What happened?
A social media post. A family friend accidentally tagged Alex in a public post from Chloe.
Oh no, what did it say?
Chloe pictured on a beach, naturally, with this caption. Sometimes the biggest act of love is letting go of toxic expectations and financial burdens you never asked for, feeling so free.
Wow. Toxic expectations. Her generosity framed as toxic.
Exactly. This wasn't subtle. It was calculated, designed for public consumption within their circle.
Taking Alex's substantial generosity, the $15,000, and twisting it into a toxic expectation that Chloe was bravely shedding.
The feeling of public humiliation, Alex writes, was immense that night.
And that's when the full weight of it all really hit her, the source says. The betrayal.
It wasn't just the money anymore.
No. It was years of being taken for granted. The layered manipulation, the persistent parental enabling.
She describes feeling like a human ATM, just perpetually available to be drained.
The source talks about a torrent of suppressed hurt, resentment, finally just pouring out.
And this is such a critical point in the narrative, right? Moving from the event itself to that deep emotional impact.
It highlights this wasn't just about finances. It was a profound violation of trust, built on years of these distorted dynamics.
So what does Alex do next? She's hit rock bottom, feels betrayed, publicly humiliated.
She reaches out, calls her best friend Maya. Barely able to speak through tears, the source says.
And Maya's response.
Clear-eyed validation. Exactly what Alex needed, it sounds like. Maya says, Alex, that's not just inconsiderate, that's literally fraud.
Calling it what it is.
Yes. They exploited your kindness and they weaponized it against you. This isn't generosity, it's abuse.
And that validation, hearing it named so precisely, fraud, abuse from someone trusted outside that skewed family system.
Must have been a lifeline.
Absolutely. It cuts right through the gaslighting, affirms her experience.
She also confides in a colleague, Ben. He'd apparently had a similar history with a demanding sibling.
Oh, interesting. So he recognized it.
Instantly. Called it family financial abuse. And Ben recommended resources.
Like what?
A therapist specializing in exactly this. Family financial dynamics, boundary setting, a Dr. Evelyn Park. And also an anonymous online support group.
A support group.
Called something like When Family Sees You as a Bank, Not a Person.
Wow. That name says it all.
Right. And finding that group, reading other stories,
Yeah.
it provided immense solace, Alex writes.
Seeing she wasn't alone in this specific painful dynamic.
Exactly. People feeling like human ATMs, kindness exploited, their worth reduced to what they could provide.
Dealing with people wanting to take without giving anything back, not even basic respect.
It showed Alex this wasn't just some personal family quirk. It was a recognized pattern of harmful behavior.
And that led to
A new resolve. The source describes it as steel-like. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was absolutely necessary for her well-being.
her kindness had been weaponized against her.
And it was time, she felt, to disarm that situation.
This marks that pivotal shift, doesn't it? From feeling like a victim trapped by circumstance and obligation.
To becoming an empowered individual ready to reclaim control.
That validation, finding shared experience, it gave her the clarity she needed to take action.
And the immediate steps she takes are decisive. No hesitation now.
What does she do?
Freezes any accounts linked to Chloe. And drafts a formal demand letter.
With legal counsel.
Yes, with a lawyer, Mrs. Davies. The letter explicitly detailed the unauthorized use of funds, the fraudulent pretenses.
And demanded the $15,000 repayment.
Within 30 days, yes.
And the lawyer's warning. Stark and predictive, the source says.
What was the warning?
Be prepared for significant family backlash. This is about power and control for them, not just money.
And Alex's source confirms this prediction was, well, chillingly accurate.
So the backlash begins.
Almost immediately. Within hours of that letter going out, her phone just blew up.
Calls, texts.
Everything. Tearful voicemails from her mother about tearing the family apart, calling Alex cold, unfeeling.
Guilt tripping.
Big time. Texts from her father expressing profound disappointment, claiming Alex's extreme measures would ruin Chloe's life.
Shifting the blame onto Alex for seeking consequences for Chloe's actions.
Meanwhile, Chloe uses social media, just as the lawyer predicted.
How? More vague posts.
Yep. Vague but pointed updates about toxic family members revealing their true colors and needing to shed negativity.
Playing the victim publicly.
And her mother actively escalates it, mass texting extended relatives.
Oh, wow. What did she say to them?
Painting Alex as unreasonable, bitter, accusing her of ruining Chloe's burgeoning artistic career purely out of jealousy.
Using the exact same manipulation tactics on the wider family.
And messages started pouring in from relatives urging Alex that family is everything. Blood is thicker than water.
Just forgive and forget. Those classic lines used to shut down accountability.
These are textbook attempts, right? Leveraging social pressure, traditional family values, guilt.
All to force Alex back into that compliant role she used to play. Using collective family expectation as a weapon.
But the source highlights Alex was prepared for this, thanks to her therapist, Dr. Park.
What did she advise?
Practical stuff. Block people on social media. Filter emails. Save voicemails as evidence.
Creating boundaries as an emotional shield against that onslaught.
Exactly. And she learned to recognize the specific manipulation tactics in all the contact attempts.
The guilt tripping, the minimization, the blame shifting.
She saw it all clearly now. And crucially, she avoided getting pulled into a public fight.
Smart move. How did she handle it?
Responded privately, calmly, factually, often with documentation, letting the facts speak.
And this calm, factual approach, It allowed the truth, kind of unburdened by all that emotional noise, to spread.
Through private conversations among relatives. And in this storm, she found allies. Vital allies.
Who stood by her?
Her cousin Michael, described as a logical software engineer. He didn't buy his aunt's dramatic story.
So he reached out to Alex.
Yeah, called her, heard the factual account, and was apparently appalled. Said something like, "They threw a luxury trip on your dime and are playing the victims." That's gaslighting on an Olympic level, Alex. Unbelievable.
Wow, that kind of clear-eyed support must have meant everything.
The source calls his unconditional support a vital anchor for her.
Anyone else?
Her Aunt Patricia also reached out. She validated Alex's experience based on watching how she'd been treated for years.
She's seen the pattern.
Yeah, always taking, rarely giving back was how she put it. And Aunt Patricia wasn't afraid to share her perspective with other family members, subtly undermining the mother's narrative.
That's powerful, having someone else challenge the dominant story.
And even an old family friend, James, sent a message. Said he'd witnessed Alex's consistent generosity over the years and Chloe's noticeable lack of appreciation.
So he saw Alex standing up for herself.
That's long overdue. An act of self-respect.
Finding these allies. It's just so important in these situations, isn't it?
Crucial. They provide validation, offer that counter-narrative to the smear campaign.
An essential emotional support when your immediate family system turns hostile. It reinforces that you're not crazy, you're not imagining things.
So the legal process is moving forward. The lawyer confirms the demand letter was formally acknowledged by Chloe's attorney.
Okay, so Chloe knows it's serious.
And then the calls from Chloe start coming directly to Alex.
How did those go?
The source describes them starting with initial tearful pleas.
Which quickly escalated into furious rage, I bet.
You got it. Yelling about collections, how Alex was going to ruin her artistic reputation.
Blaming Alex again.
Always. But Alex's response, detailed in the source, is notable. She stayed calm, steady.
Held firm.
Completely. I didn't authorize those expenses. You did. You took my money under false pretenses.
Simple facts.
And when Chloe falls back on that ingrained phrase, "But you're supposed to help family,"
What did Alex say?
she delivers this really powerful line. Family doesn't steal from family, Chloe, and family doesn't lie about their intentions.
Wow. That's a fundamental boundary statement right there, defining what family isn't.
Later, her mother shows up at Alex's apartment, unannounced.
Oh, an ambush.
Pretty much. Sobbing about destroying Chloe's future, breaking the family apart, all the hits.
But Alex holds her ground.
Stands firm at the door, doesn't let her in, just states her piece. "I didn't create this situation. You all did when you chose to abuse my trust and enable Chloe's irresponsible behavior."
Taking the responsibility back where it belonged.
And she adds, "My financial stability comes from careful planning and boundaries, not an endless supply of cash for others' luxuries."
Drawing a clear line between her resources and their expectations.
And this interaction really highlights Alex's inner shift, doesn't it?
How so?
The source mentions that familiar pull of guilt trying to settle in. But this time, it was quickly replaced.
By what?
Righteous anger and this burgeoning self-respect. For the first time, she was explicitly prioritizing her own well-being, her financial security.
Over their manipulative expectations.
And she describes it feeling fundamentally absolutely right.
That's a huge turning point. So what happens next? Does it go to court?
Not quite. Following her therapist's advice, Alex suggests a meeting, but only with a professional mediator.
A controlled environment. Miss Sarah Jenkins, the source names her.
Right, making that the only context for any discussion. No more ambushes or phone calls.
And the family agrees. That's surprising.
It is. Alex speculates it might be due to the public scrutiny among relatives, or maybe the looming legal pressure.
The mediator is key here, though. Establishes ground rules. Creates structure.
Allows Alex to present her factual account, using records, even the social media posts as evidence.
And articulate the impact, the emotion, the financial toll.
Yes, the years of feeling used, the complete erosion of trust.
And she clearly states why boundaries were not just crossed, but shattered.
And why she can't continue a relationship where she feels valued only for her money, or where her generosity is seen as weakness to be exploited.
And this leads to...
the parents reluctantly agreeing to terms.
What terms?
Full repayment of the $15,000. A written acknowledgement of wrongdoing from Chloe.
An apology. Wow.
And clear, documented boundaries for any future financial interactions. No assumptions, formal loan documents for anything.
How does Chloe react to that?
Initially balks furiously, the source says. but eventually agrees.
Why the change of heart?
The mediator apparently highlighted the legal alternatives and the potential impact on her reputation if this went further.
So pragmatism won out.
Seems so. And Alex's explanation for the terms is telling. She frames them as necessary for rebuilding trust, not as punitive.
Understanding that without that foundation of mutual trust and respect, there is no healthy relationship possible.
So an agreement is reached. What happens in the aftermath?
The 6 months that followed are described as challenging, but ultimately clarifying for Alex.
The parents adhered to the payment schedule.
Initially, yes. Communication is minimal, but civil. Like a managed business relationship, Alex calls it.
And Chloe.
She makes payments, but often late, with obvious resentment, offering excuses for delays.
But Alex holds firm. Doesn't let the boundaries slide.
Holds firm to the structured plan, refuses to let things blur again.
So the family dynamic settles into this limited functional pattern.
Pretty much. An interesting side note, the parents actually start working with a legitimate financial advisor recommended by Alex.
Oh, right.
And the source notes they make tangible progress toward greater independence, suggesting maybe Alex's stand kind of forced them to confront their own enabling behavior, their own financial situation.
That's a positive outcome, at least. What about Chloe?
She minimizes contact after the repayment is complete, sticks to her original narrative.
Still sees Alex as too rigid, too focused on money.
Exactly. Someone not part of her free-spirited creative journey.
So the structured consequences enforced the behavior, the repayment, but didn't necessarily change the underlying mindset.
Precisely. You can force compliance sometimes, but not genuine understanding or regret necessarily. The enabling relationship dynamic itself might persist internally for Chloe.
And Alex, how does she navigate this new reality?
Wisely, it seems. Focuses on her own well-being, her own growth.
Her career flourishes, right? She gets a promotion.
Yes. And she buys her dream home. But significantly.
She doesn't share this news with her immediate family.
The source notes she doesn't. She's learned the hard way that such financial milestones often just trigger new demands or resentment.
That's a crucial lesson learned, isn't it? Protecting your stability, celebrating your success. It doesn't require inviting the expectations of those who've exploited you.
It's part of that new hard-won boundary.
And then there's this really powerful, quiet act of defiance. Or maybe reclamation.
The scholarship fund.
Yes. Alex anonymously establishes a scholarship fund for aspiring disadvantaged artists through a charitable trust.
What a contrast. It just stands in sharp relief to how Chloe used funds solicited for art, right?
Totally. Chloe's $15 K went to a luxury trip. Alex takes her own capacity for generosity, the very thing that was violated.
And redirects it.
Right.
Supports genuine artistic endeavor, but on her own terms.
Through a structured, non-exploitative channel, it shows her generosity wasn't extinguished by the abuse.
It was refined, protected, reclaimed.
So time passes. About a year after everything, Alex meets her mother for coffee.
How's the relationship by then?
Stabilized, the source says. More balanced, but still cautious.
And the mother?
There's this hesitant admission. I understand better now why what we did was wrong.
Acknowledging fault.
Yeah. She adds it wasn't just about the money. It was about respect. Our respect for you.
Wow. That's significant.
It resonates deeply with Alex's core feeling through this whole ordeal. Her response is simple. It was always about respect.
Does the mother mention Chloe?
Yes. Says Chloe still doesn't see it, still believes Alex abandoned her, was cruel.
Holding onto her narrative.
But the source says Alex feels a profound peace about this now. That's Chloe's perspective, driven by her unwillingness to confront her own actions.
But Alex knows the truth.
And crucially, so do the allies who supported her. Michael and Patricia, the people who saw it clearly.
The mother's apology, however belated and imperfect, it acknowledges what Alex calls the long unseen invoice finally paid.
It wasn't that storybook reconciliation she might have once dreamed of.
But maybe something more valuable.
Absolutely. Alex's journey, as described here, from financial doormat to standing firm with unwavering self-respect and clear boundaries.
It was hard, incredibly painful, clearly.
But depicted as undeniably necessary. She learned that stark difference between genuine, healthy generosity and insidious exploitation.
Learn the necessity of unyielding boundaries when dealing with people who consistently disregard them.
And learned her own worth exists entirely independent of her ability or willingness to provide for others.
The source makes such a crucial point throughout this that resonates, I think. Family relationships. They aren't automatically healthy just because they're family.
Right. They require mutual respect, consideration, care from everyone involved.
And when you're taken for granted or exploited, protecting yourself, your resources, it isn't selfish.
It's essential self-preservation.
And the ending of this narrative, it isn't neat. No fairy tale reconciliation.
No. It's something messier, harder won, but described as far more valuable for Alex.
Her head held high, her spirit unburdened by guilt or false obligation.
And that deep, quiet certainty of her own self-worth. An unexpected ending, perhaps.
Thoroughly deserved.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, what does Alex's story offer you, listening right now? It really lays bare those insidious signs of enabling, of financial exploitation.
The painful impact of gaslighting, manipulation, and it underscores the incredible importance of finding validation from trusted sources outside that immediate dynamic.
It highlights the absolute necessity and often the profound difficulty of setting firm boundaries. And it reinforces that true, healthy family relationships, well, they have to be built on mutual respect.
Protecting your emotional and financial well-being, fundamentally, it's an act of self-respect, not selfishness. Did any patterns or dynamics from Alex's story resonate with your own experiences, your own relationships?
What does this story maybe make you consider about the boundaries in your own important relationships, whether they're familial or otherwise?
Alex's story ultimately shows us that sometimes achieving that true freedom, that peace, it means letting go of the expectation of familial approval or the storybook reconciliation you might have wished for.
In favor of your own internal peace, your own certainty of self-worth, it forces a provocative question, really. What does family truly mean, and what are its obligations when fundamental respect is absent?